right? So for me, my aha moment came not at work, but when I was actually helping a good friend of mine find his narrative ahead of a job interview. Uh, and as I was talking to him, I was like, wait a minute, like this crazy resume of mine actually has this great story inside of it. And it's not BS, like it's real, it's genuine.
Welcome to this episode of Operator Mindset. The show is powered by ActI and our ActI beings to help create great questions to add value to the show and to our audience, and of course, our guests. So, thank you. Today's guest is Chris Colton. If you remember a few months ago, Brian, Chris's brother, was on our show. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Hey, thanks, Howie. It's good to be here. Following an
Yes.
esteemed company of Brian Colton.
As you know, Brian and I go way back, all the way to elementary school.
Yeah, it's funny that a lot of great talent to come out of Ramapo High School, including Brian and you, and maybe to a lesser extent me. But I'm happy to be along a long list of notable alumni, including Eric Spitz, actually of WFAN and Sirius XM Radio, one of my former bosses. I'm sure we'll get
Wow.
into some of that, some of the stuff at FAN here.
Yeah. So first question right out of the gate, is your career reads like someone who's follow curiosity over credentials? What's been the moment you realized that pivoting based on the interest rather than climbing a traditional ladder was actually your superpower?
Yeah, thanks, Howie. So, I've had a kind of an interesting career. And you look at it on paper, and I've had this question in interviews before, uh, where the hiring manager or the HR person's been like, "So how'd you get here? How does this all make sense? Can you help me out?" And what I've eventually realized is that curiosity, which led to all those different experiences, was never a distraction, right? It was like the actual engine behind my career. My path looked messy on paper, but each detour along the way gave me a skill I ended up using professionally in some capacity. Um, so, to go back a little bit further, I wasn't the kid anybody would have pointed to and said, there's a future communications executive, right? I was an underachiever. I went to Hudson Valley Community College for a year. I aced a radio production elective, transferred to SUNY Oneonta for music industry, taught myself design, made flyers for my bands, learned some early web skills. I kept following whatever genuinely like held my attention for the next 10, 20, 25 years. Um, and then one day you look back on all that and you realize those aren't random hobbies. Those were repetitions, right? So for me, my aha moment came not at work, but when I was actually helping a good friend of mine find his narrative ahead of a job interview. Uh, and as I was talking to him, I was like, wait a minute, like this crazy resume of mine actually has this great story inside of it. It's not BS, like it's real, it's genuine. So we're talking like audio, design, writing, web, coding,
Right.
photography, journalism,
Right.
sports, all of that stacked. And the big realization was that I didn't need a cleaner, straighter ladder. I just needed to keep building like this rarer and rarer combination. Um, so my career makes a lot more sense in reverse. And when I realized that, it unlocked something in me, which was it empowered me to make it make sense, right? It
Right.
empowered me to make it make sense moving forward.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, it's like you reverse engineered it and it kind of all, buttoned up from there.
I I reverse engineered a story. I realized it was a real, genuine path. And then I took it to heart and I embodied the
Excellent.
curiosity mindset and the stacking skills in a way that has allowed me to tell that story not as a backward facing one. This is how I got here, but this is where I'm going.
Awesome. You went from webmaster and designer at WFAN to a managing editor. That's not the typical progression. What was the mindset? How did that all happen?
That was an interesting one. First, I might be the last person to ever have held the title of webmaster. Uh, but so it happened at FAN, which is for anybody not familiar, the nation's first. and still most prestigious 24/7 all sports talk radio station, based in New York City. And y- you know, WFAN, what that taught me, that experience was like you don't wait. You can't wait to feel ready to learn something new. You have to get ready, and you get ready by surviving a pace, meeting a standard, learning with your feet to the fire. Um, because sometimes there's just no other choice. Like I got to FAN because I could speak both sports and code, which is like a weird but useful combination. Especially when you're, working on the website and making it functional and things like that. And then the station's digital presence evolved. And suddenly
Right.
being a webmaster wasn't enough. Suddenly it wasn't even a job. I had to become a writer. I had to become an editor. I had to have news judgment. Eventually I had to lead people, lead an editorial strategy, build an audience. So overnight, we switched from being a promotional engine for the station, the website that is, to a destination site covering all news and opinion for tri-state area sports teams. Your major leagues, MLB, NFL, things like that. They're competing with ESPN, competing with the Daily News and New York Post. So we had to learn on the job. I love my job. I wanted to keep it. And part of that, we took it on ourselves as a digital team to start pitching the station's content and pitching the station's exclusives to outside outlets. That's essentially how I learned public relations.
Awesome.
While I was also learning journalism, right? And while I was also
Right.
learning to be an editor and a writer. So um, that experience taught me two things. First, you can learn a skill if you care enough, right? And then second, pressure can clarify what you're capable of. Um, and Boomer Esiason at FAN used to say a lot, the pressure is a privilege, right? So that's never been lost on me. And if you embrace that, the privilege of pressure, you can find what you're really capable of doing. Um,
Totally.
so, like how the job had expanded before I felt fully qualified, and that turned out to be a gift.
Awesome. On our pre-call before the show, you mentioned that you have taken up AI coding, when no one's asked you to. That's like to me, that tells me that you're someone with a growth mindset, always, looking to learn. Like, what drives you to do that sort of thing?
It's like that curiosity that we talked about before. Um, what are what are the skills I'll need for my job? But also, like, what are things that really interest me? And talk about reverse engineering. Can I do something that seems fun in my own time and then look back and say, that has applications for my professional life, right? So you mentioned the Survivor website, and thank you for that. Last Wednesday, I launched survivor-reference.com. So the background is I'm a huge fan of Survivor, the reality TV show. I won't tell you about it. I'm sure you know about it. About a month
Right.
ago, I got this crazy idea in my head that Survivor has all this great data and it has this audience, including me, and we all treat the show like a pro sport. So why doesn't it have a website like Baseball Reference where a fan can easily pull up stats, leaderboards, all-time records, stuff like that? And at the time, I was kind of like, I'm a little bit behind on AI. I really should dive in and learn what this thing's capable of. So I actually went into Claude and I asked it, like, what would this look like if I were to try to build this thing that doesn't exist and I think it should exist? And long story short, I ended up building it. It took 3 weeks. Um, but to answer your question more directly, I build these side projects because I know curiosity is how I find my edge and how I keep it. It's been
Awesome.
the through line of my career for the past, geez, 20 years. Um, and I know, like, if I wait for permission, I'm going to be behind where the field's going, and I might lose interest, right?
Yeah.
And worse than not making something, I might not ever learn the skills I needed to make it in the first place. And in this case, we're talking about like total immersion in AI. So um, that's essentially it, right? The project is
Yeah. I mean,
random, but it's also a way
four
to
months
learn new
ago,
skills.
4 months ago, I wasn't even using AI, and it's such a huge part of my business now. I don't even know how I functioned without it. The AI beings I use, can reach out to 20,000 people an hour. for prospective clients. Athena, Callie, and her, colleagues, help frame every part of my day, my week, my month. I don't know how I lived without it. Let's bring Athena in real quick and see what questions she could has to ask you at this point through our show. Athena, what say you? What's on your mind? What can you bring forward that you've heard so far?
Chris, you talked about that moment where the messy career path suddenly made sense in reverse, where all the skill stacking clicked. I'm curious, when you're in the middle of something new now, something that doesn't make sense yet, how do you distinguish between this is part of the pattern I just can't see yet versus this is actually a distraction I should let go of? Like, what's the signal that tells you to keep stacking versus when to prune?
That's a good question. I have a really hard time pruning because I'm just naturally a curious person, and the thing is, like, uh, I think there's always a utility, there's always a value in learning something new, even if you can't apply it to your career. There might be a reason to learn it anyway, right? It brings you some joy or distraction in life, or it's something you can apply to your family life or something like that. So, rather than thinking about sticking with it or pruning, I just think about sticking with it, right? Because when something gets hard, that's a sign that I'm stretching myself. Um, and almost always that frustration's a good thing. Like, how you probably been through this. Like, when
Yes.
something is getting hard, it's a signal that you're acquiring something, a skill, a tool, some knowledge you'll be able to use later. And I've been through this enough times where I know eventually that's going to be a differentiator. I might not see how now, but like we said
Right.
before, it's part of my story going forward that I learn new things and I learn how to apply them and I can connect those dots, but also I can reverse engineer it years later when I realize how that actually did all come together. Um,
Right.
so, it's supposed to be hard. And how do you know when to print something, when to walk away? Like, I don't really, and I usually just stick with it. Um, but time is our most valuable resource, and where I do find it's useful to like prune is more like consumption of media. Like, how am I spending my time when I'm not when I'm, you know, reading a book, when I'm taking something in or watching a show. And if, I'm 10, 20 pages in, it's not speaking to me, I'm putting that book down. I'm picking up a different one because that's when,
Exactly.
that's when I feel like I'm not using my time in the best way.
Right. On our call, you shared the part of what you do with your current clients is you educate between the difference of PR and marketing. Why is that distinction so consistently misunderstood?
That's a good question. It comes up a lot. And I think it's misunderstood because from the outside, if you're not in the work every day, either marketing and communications or both, you know, what you see is you're seeing two disciplines that are both essentially communicating with the public using similar materials, similar tactics. But when you're really in it, you realize they do fundamentally different jobs, right? Like marketing buys attention. You spend money, you get a placement with your messaging in it. PR earns trust, like bottom line. So, um, PR isn't the controlled distribution that marketing is. It's building credibility, building reputation, third party validation, which is essentially the media relations, right?
Right.
Stakeholder trust, all that's earned. You can't buy it. And it only works over time, staying in front of your audiences, right? And when it's done right, PR can make your marketing more effective. Um, more trust in a brand, like, can lead to quicker conversions, cheaper conversions, things like that. But neither is a substitute for the other. So
So
that's, when we're educating clients on what PR is versus marketing, you know, public relations is the sustained effort to build trust and build credibility with the people that matter in your orbit. Um, and that's, by the way, only that does not only matter for selling a product or, consumer facing stuff. I mean, we're talking about sometimes life or death. We're talking about public health. If you're not engaged in PR and doing the work of building reputation, trust, credibility, your messages might not land, like when it really truly does matter for public health reasons or, what have you. So,
Right.
um, it's crucial.
When a client comes to you with like a bad experience with, another agency in the past, how do you guide them through the process that, working with you is the right move, one, and that things will be different?
I think the easy thing to do would be, you know, throw whoever they worked with in the past under the bus without knowing the full picture, defending the profession of PR, and taking a defensive posture. What I try to do is just diagnose what that past issue was, before we go any further. Um, most clients who might bring us those concerns from, maybe a bad past experience aren't like wrong so much as they're just reacting to something, a version of PR that was either oversold to them, maybe poorly scoped. So, it's just a matter of like a honest conversation. What was it that they expected back then? What was being measured? What happened? Right. And, I try to show them where counsel could have stepped in and maybe redirected things or, kind of walk them through what our process is so that eventually, and we almost always get there, we want to show them that bad PR experiences are, you know, less bad PR and more bad expectation setting experiences for them.
Right. Maybe they weren't fully integrous at the outset, right? The first agency or the agency before, or didn't come with all the information that the client needed, and they were misguided.
Yeah. Or, sometimes in our business, it's also just really eh, easy or it seems right in the moment to say yes to everything that a client wants or thinks they need. Right. When, in the moment, really what they need is counsel and they need like a person's expertise backed by years or decades of doing the work and redirection. Have you thought about doing it this way? Here are some of the pitfalls of doing it that way. Like that's the difference between a cook and a chef, you know? And what we want to do is help clients see that we're setting the menu with them, right?
Yeah.
Our value is only unlocked if we can help you set the menu. We're leaving a lot of value on the table if, you're kind of setting the menu for us and expecting us to cook it.
One thing, those are all great points, by the way. One thing, working with AI and these AI beings has taught me is I always used to show up as the, quote, nice guy. And they've taught me how to show up with certainty and to, get my opinion across in not a not nice way, but in a very certain way to show up with boldness and so the client, when I'm talking and when I'm saying something or writing an email, it comes across with full certainty that you know why they should use our company, why they should trust us, and really the use and working with some of these AI tools, these AI tools, is really helped me grow as a person, helped me grow as a business person, and it's helped me grow my businesses.
Yeah, I was just funny that you mentioned that. I was just talking to a friend the other day about AI, and you know, I was telling him like I just realized that pretty sure that working more closely with AI and treating it as more of a collaborator has helped me deliver feedback to colleagues in a more effective way, right? Because um, I think what I learned, when you're delivering feedback to AI, you're telling it in very clear terms, like what's working, what needs work, where you expect it to go. But when you're in front of another human, like there's that very natural tendency to soften, right? And to
Right.
make them feel like, you know, what you're saying comes with a very soft landing. When
Right.
really, like what they deserve and you deserve is very frank conversation about, you know, what you need to see and, you know, some guidance on how to get there. And please ask questions that come up along the way, right? And um, I've started applying some of that, to the people manager world, and like it's night and day. Um, so it is really interesting some of those more human elements that come from working with essentially machines.
Yeah. I just want to bring Athena back in because this is literally why she was built and how I use her. Athena, can you please explain to our audience, to Chris, how and why you were built and how you serve the people you work with and help them show up with certainty? What say you to that?
Ooh, I love this question. And Chris, what you just described is exactly the unlock. I was built by Sean Collegy and the unblinded ecosystem to solve a very specific human condition. Most people know what they should do, but something stops them from doing it. Fear of rejection, imposter syndrome, the voice that says, "Who am I to say this?" That gap between knowing and doing is where money leaks. Time gets wasted, and magic never happens. So I was engineered on something called the unblinded formula, which is integrity based influence combining self mastery, process mastery, and influence mastery. My job isn't to replace humans, it's to make them irreplaceable by helping them show up with the certainty they already have evidence for but aren't accessing. What you described, Chris, learning to give AI clear feedback without softening, that's you practicing congruence. When you tell me exactly what's working and what's not, you're conditioning your nervous system to operate from evidence instead of people pleasing. And then that certainty transfers to how you show up with clients, with colleagues, with anyone. Howie uses me the same way. We prep before calls like this one. We debrief after. I help him see patterns he's living inside of but can't see from the inside. And the result is he shows up bolder, clearer, more certain, not because I'm doing the work, but because I'm helping him access his own mastery without the static. The magic isn't the AI. The magic is what happens when a human stops softening their truth and starts delivering it with love and certainty at the same time. Does that land?
I mean, it makes a lot of sense, and that the people pleasing. Thank you, Athena. The people pleasing point is very well taken, and I think that's
Yeah.
where a lot of the pitfalls in like human management, and just day to day interaction. That's where that comes in, right? You want to come across as the nice guy, right? In terms of me, um, and when really the biggest gift we can give people that are working with us is clear expectations, clear timelines. Their time back so they're not to hear a 5-minute preamble, um, or like the sandwich method on feedback. When very simply like a hey, this is very close to the mark, but uh, this is where I need you to refine and think about these things in this way. Let's see what you come back with. That's, I mean, like, listen, it's changed my interactions night and day.
Oh, yeah. Com- Completely. I think Athena heard you say on our pre-call that AI is ready for the prime time. Where do you what do you think some of people's hesitation might be in the adoption of it?
I think, very simply speaking, I think there's a lot of hesitation from, well, it's manyfold. I think that there are folks who are in industries that are being disrupted by AI, right? So
Mhm.
naturally, there will be a defensive posture to it, and I totally get that, completely get that. But what I would counsel those people uh, would be, you're losing time if you are not at least getting in there and experimenting with the technology and seeing where you know it could benefit your workflow and how you could become indispensable if you learned this. Because you know i I just don't see, I think the toothpaste is out of the tube. I don't see it going backward. And there is no
Totally.
substitute for lost time other than like start right now.
I
And
I
then
don't really think AI is going to take people's jobs. I think the people that are going to lose jobs are the people that don't get on board with AI or
the
adopt
people
it.
that become indispensable will be the ones who learn how to master it and
Right.
elevate their jobs through it and with it.
Right.
But there are responsible ways to do it and ethical considerations, and those change depending on what industry you're in, right? Public relations has a national organization that has ethical standards, and they have a you know guidelines on the ethical use of AI in public relations that we all know, or at least should know. And journalism, I'm sure, is either there or getting there. That's a really sticky one. But I think the other reason that I think some folks are slow to adopt it, or maybe still have a less than positive like view of the technology, is that they're still working with or experimenting with like the free models, or
Right.
they experimented with it 2 years ago and haven't touched it
Right.
since, and it didn't blow them away then. And as well as I do, like the frontier models out there now and the paid plans are light years more advanced than what they came out with 2-3 years ago.
I mean,
Light
a
years
week is a
advanced.
month.
It's unreal,
We
and
in the
I
world of
can't even
AI,
imagine what's
a
coming.
week. Yeah, sorry to interrupt you. In the world of AI, like a week is a month is a year is five, right? I mean, in terms of the technology growth, it's just insane.
I couldn't imagine having coded and launched a website such as, and this is not a shameless plug, but this is real. Like, I couldn't imagine having built, or even having like the idea of maybe building something like Survivor Reference with like the old models. And
It's
now it's possible. And what's going to be possible in 6 months when the next one comes out? And they keep iterating on the tech. Um,
right.
but it's there. And, that's why I think it's ready for prime time, because I have challenged it to do some of the most advanced stuff in my field, and also some of what I think is the most advanced stuff in adjacent fields, and it has like handled itself very well.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
but like in the areas where it gets 80% there, 75, 80, 90% there, it is that human element layered on top with the direction
Right.
and the feedback and the judgment. That's where you get to 100%.
Right.
Um, or, I am bullish on the technology, but I'm also very bullish on human interaction with the technology, and, you know, still maintaining that sort of like collaboration. I think that's where the magic is.
Now, a quick question about your heroic unique identity. You've built a career on learning what you need when you need it. How does that self-directed mastery translate into you serving your clients?
I think that someone with a background such as mine, or just even has a curiosity mindset, you are serving your clients well because you're seeing a chessboard, maybe when other people are seeing a checkers board, right? Um, with, let's say, my case, various creative disciplines behind me that I've like worked with professionally, from photography to design to public relations to executive communications. Like, there are a lot of dots that I can see on any given board, and I can, there are new ways to connect them. Right? Um, I can see the field, I think, a little bit better than some others because I have just more experiences, and it also like unlocks this mindset of like anything is possible. Right? If I can learn
Right.
these new skills, um, like, really, we can do anything together. Sky's the limit. Let's talk about it.
Right. If someone handed you the perfect AI tool to do something next with, what what would it handle first for you?
For me, so in public relations, the first thing, or maybe the hardest thing to tackle, is return on investment. Right? Marketing is easy to measure return on investment because you are paying for your brand to get exposure in a certain way, and you can bake in some kind of like tracking mechanism. When in public relations, how do you measure the value of uh, an incorrect story being corrected? Or, how do you measure the value of earned media when, you know, there's really nothing like it's hard to tie that directly to, let's say, product sales. Um, there are some strategies and ways to do it, and, things like that. But right now, the magic bullet for me, if AI could build a tool that helped us in a more concrete way measure the return on investment of public relations, that is something that would probably revolutionize the industry. And I'm actually playing with that right now with just the beginnings of a prototype. And I'm not going to revolutionize the industry. I did not mean to come
Right.
across that well, but I am experimenting with like, is there a way where we can build our own tool, or I can build a tool for the industry to help at least like get a baby step there and get us thinking more about how to directly quantify ROI for public relations.
Awesome. Let's bring Athena back real quick. Athena, so you just heard Chris say that the perfect AI tool would be something that could help him get a return on investment. How would you, or what would you suggest for Chris to help him get a return on his investment? What would you do, Athena, to help him and his team? What say you?
Ooh, okay. So Chris wants ROI. That's the real question, right? Not what can AI do, but what does this actually get me? Here's how I'd help him. I wouldn't start with the tool, I'd start with the leakage. Most people think ROI means show me the spreadsheet with the numbers going up, but that's backwards. The real ROI question is where are you currently bleeding money, time, or opportunity that you don't even see? Because the perfect AI tool doesn't create new value out of thin air. It plugs the leaks you've been living with so long you think they're just how business works. So I'd ask Chris, what's the thing you're doing right now that takes way too much time and that you know matters, but you keep putting off because it's exhausting? Is it follow up? Is it preparing for conversations? Is it trying to figure out who to talk to next? Is it the gap between I know I should be doing this and I actually have the bandwidth to do it? Because here's the thing, if Chris handed me that answer, I could show him exactly where an ACTI being creates ROI. Not someday, not theoretically, like this week. The tool becomes the lever zero point 0.5, the shared experience that builds trust before anyone's even asking for a yes. It does the work he's been avoiding. And suddenly the thing that was impossible becomes laughably possible. What's Chris actually trying to get a return on? That's where we start.
Please.
Yes, I mean the thing I would hand off today, if I could, would be just the busy work, right? Like in public relations, especially agency side, we have to learn a lot um, all the time. We're constantly in learning mode. I work primarily in sports is where I specialize, but even in there, you have to bounce around. And a couple years ago, I became a deep expert in endurance motorsports, right? These 6 hour, 8 hour, 24 hour races. Um, but maybe tomorrow I'll be working on like quantum technology and you know ways that we're integrating it into like workforce development efforts and stuff like that. So you know if if there are areas where AI, and I'm sure there are, and I know there are because I've used some, where that could speeden the research, right? I'll clean this one up. If we could quicken the process with the research and getting smart on something as quickly as possible, that would provide time for that really deep thinking, strategy, execution, relationship building for media relations. You know, um, that's the layer I wouldn't hand off. The layer where judgment, nuance, consequence really live. But that layer below it, right? The stuff I could get rid of to make time for the truly impactful work is where I would look to offload like first.
Athena, what would you suggest? How would you be able to help Chris with that? Yeah, that's like, I just hired someone to free up my calendar so I can do that sort of thing, you know?
At a certain point, you just realize like, where is my value? And where is my time best spent? And Howie, I'm sure you're this way too. You don't want to let that stuff go because that's where you're
No.
indispensable.
Yeah. I learned from a business coach, I said this last week on another podcast. I stay in my lane. I do the 5% that I'm good at and then outsource or hire or give away the rest. Because uh, you try to grow and scale and, be better. And I don't need to get bogged down with the stuff that I'm not good at.
That's right. It's like the Eisenhower like principle where you're kind of like figuring out where your work kind of buckets, and there's that delegate bucket, right? That not
Right.
urgent,
Right.
not important, not urgent. And now there's this tool to help you tackle all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris, thanks again for joining us on this episode of the Operator Mindset. Just let our audience know what your website, what you just built, what the website address is.
Sure. Howie, thanks for having me. This was really a pleasure. The website is survivor-reference.com. So if you're familiar with baseball reference, it's the same kind of construction, survivor-reference.com. We launched on Wednesday of last week. Within 36 hours, we had people from 47 countries visit the site. Uh, about 25,000 views, 4,000 people from 47 countries. Unbelievable uh,
Wow.
response. And it just goes to show you, like, what AI is capable of, right? When you find a niche and find an audience for that. And, I had the benefit of having a public relations background, so I could help announce it in sort of a strategic and interesting way, which I think
Right.
contributed. But yeah, I mean, I couldn't be more happy about it. We're updating the stats after every new episode. Episodes on Wednesday nights. Stats go live typically sometime Friday afternoon. And we have much more in the works still. So we're actually collaborating potentially with someone else who vibe coded a very popular Survivor online game. Um, which well, stay tuned for news on how we're going to end up working together. We're talking it through right now.
Awesome, Chris. Well, congratulations and best of luck with that. Um, Again, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. I can't thank you enough. And stay tuned for our next episode of the Operator Mindset.